Welcome to Book Lounge by Libby. I'm Joe, and I'm so happy you're here. This is the show where book lovers, authors, and industry insiders come together to talk about the stories we love and the impact they have. Before we dive in, don't forget to follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your favorite podcast app, just wherever you do your listening. And you can subscribe to the Libby app YouTube channel for video versions of the episode. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you want to watch or listen so you never miss an episode. Like I said, video is on YouTube and Spotify. If you love what we're doing, leave a review or drop a comment on the video. It really helps more folks find the show. Now, today's topic is one that is very near and dear to my heart: comics, graphic novels, and manga. It's no secret to longtime listeners that I'm a big old graphic novel nerd. I love them so much, and right now, summertime is the time of year where I do the most of my graphic novel reading. I often recommend changing up your format to break out of a reading slump, welcome in new readers, or try to understand different concepts. And we've talked about in the past graphic memoirs and all varieties of written plus illustrated word. But in the US, since 2019, the sale of graphic novels has jumped more than 100% year over year. And in 2022, graphic novels were the third highest selling genre behind general fiction and romance. That is from the Telegraph Herald, linked in the show notes. But you can look at this genre broadly, from ancient times with cave paintings to hieroglyphs, frescoes, and other arts. That laid the foundation for the form. And this and a little bit further is from Robert J. Paradowski in an EBSCO article posted in 2022, also linked in the show notes. But he also cites tapestries and stained glass windows in the Middle Ages as part of this work. This continued on into woodcuts to comic strips until Sunday funnies and comic books all kind of merged together eventually to where we are today. Our group today shows the breadth of this genre. All of the work created by these folks tackles topics, themes, and concepts to help us all live and experience our lives more authentically. Sometimes it's commentary, sometimes it's fiction and humor, but everyone has a unique perspective to share. So joining me today, our mother and daughter duo, Suzy Hopkins and Hallie Bateman. Suzy reported and edited for 4 Northern California newspapers before founding and running a community magazine for 10 years. Now her interests include gardening, playing with her grandchildren, and dreaming up new writing projects with her daughter and artist, Hallie Bateman. She's at Hopkins Suzy on Instagram. Hallie Bateman is an illustrator who has been published in the New York Times, New Yorker, BuzzFeed, and more. She has published many books over the years, including Brave New Work, Directions, and with her mother Suzy, What to Do When I'm Gone and What to Do When You Get Dumped. She's on Instagram at Haleth Bates. Maia Kobabe is an author-illustrator from Bay Area, California. Her first full-length book, Genderqueer, a Memoir, came out from Lion Forge Comics Oni Press in May 2019. Genderqueer was the winner of an Alex Award and Stonewall Honor in 2020, and nominated for an Ignatz Award and the Best Graphic Novels for Teens list from YA LSA in 2019. It was also the most challenged book in the United States in 2021, 2022, and 2023. Maia's been published in The Nib, The New Yorker, The Washington Post, and many anthologies from 2015 to 2025. Maia's second book is the nonfiction comic Breathe, Journeys to Healthy Binding, written with Dr. Sarah Peitzmeier, released by Dutton Penguin Young Readers in May 2024. Both Genderqueer and Breathe were released as audiobooks in May 25 from Penguin Random House Audio. Maia is currently working with co-author Lucky Srikumar on a middle grade fiction comic due out from Scholastic's Graphics in 2026. Before setting out in freelance full-time, Maia worked over 10 years in libraries. He's been self-publishing comics and zines since 2010 and has attended over 50 comic conventions in that time. Her work focuses on gender, sexuality, queerness, and pop culture fandom. Maia can be found on Instagram at redgoldsparks. And Mattie Lubchansky is a cartoonist and illustrator living in beautiful Queens, New York. She is the former associate editor of Ignatz and Eisner Award-winning magazine and website, The Nib. Her work has appeared in The Nib, Vice's science fiction vertical Motherboard, Eater, Mad Magazine, Gothamist, The Toast, The Hairpin, Brooklyn Magazine, New York Magazine, Food and Wine, Current Affairs, and her long-running webcomic, Please Listen to Me. Mattie is the author of Simplicity, coming this July from Pantheon, Boys Weekend, Pantheon 2023, the Antifa Super Soldier Cookbook from Silver Sprocket 2021, The co-author of Dad Magazine, Quirk, 2016, author of Skeleton Party, self-published 2016, co-editor and contributor to the Nibs anthology, Be Gay Do Comics, IDW 2020, contributor to the Lambda Literary Award-winning anthology, Too Trans, Too Furious, an extremely serious journal of transgender street racing studies, Girl Dad Press, 2023, and co-editor and contributor to the Eisner-nominated anthology Flash Forward, an illustrated guide to possible and not so possible tomorrows from Abrams in 2021. She was the Erblock Prize finalist in 2020. Mattie is on Instagram at Mattie Lubchansky. And now with that, let's turn the page and dive in. Well, everyone, welcome. Hello. Thank you all so much for being here today.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
We have an incredible panel here today to talk about something that I am so very passionate about. I love comics, graphic novels, manga, anything you can think of. If there is a visual version to it, I want it. If you're not watching the video, if you're just listening to me, you can't tell how subtle I am as a person looking at me. But so something about me liking really graphic prints and things is probably a big surprise. But to the group, let's just dive right in. I want to start off by looking at kind of the evolution of the space. How would you say the perception of graphic novels and the artistry overall has changed over the years? I mean, we're moving from what was niche to now widely embraced. I mean, 100% year-over-year growth since 2019 and consideration across the board, literary, academic. What do y'all think?
I don't think I knew that.
I mean, I think like for me, the broad strokes that kind of I'm aware of was like, it was, like the graphic novel came about, like the 60s or 70s is a sort of thing. And then there would be the odd breakthrough that was treated as like a sort of a literary curio, like your Mouse or your Persepolis or something. Just to name a couple of ones that people like, maybe you read it in high school or whatever. And then things kind of toddled on that with your blankets, and then some point in the last 15 years, there was a huge boom of YA graphic novels that really took off. And I think what we're seeing now is a lot of those people are adults and they're buying adult graphic novels now, which is really wonderful to see. And
their
it's
purchasing power. Yeah, it's strong.
I would definitely say that, unfortunately, like we do still run into teachers and librarians saying like graphic novel reading or comic book reading is not real reading, especially I would say in like elementary school spaces where there is still sort of a perception that comics are for kids.
Yeah.
But also this year in 2025, we just saw Tessa Hole's Feeding Ghosts win the Pulitzer for the second only time that a graphic novel was honored with a Pulitzer. The first one being Mouse, which was given sort of a special category recognition of just its importance as a work. Whereas Tessa's is the first one ever to win in one of the normal Pulitzer book categories. So I do think, like Mattie was saying, like there's been this evolution of sort of understanding of graphic novels as a literary art form. And I'm really hoping that Tessa's win helps push that, because I am pretty tired of the like comic book reading is not real reading arguments.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's
especially from teachers.
Yeah, there's definitely the article that's come out every 6 months for 30 years now. That with some headline like "With Bang Boom, comics just aren't for kids anymore." Like, and we just keep seeing it over and over. And every time a new person discovers that this is true, they got to write the article, and I got to read
it.
See what's changed.
Yeah,
not much. Not even the title.
For my perception, I mean, I definitely feel like I kind of came to this world a bit late. Like I didn't go to art school, and I kind of like in college like realized that comics was like, I discovered Linda Berry and was like, oh my god. Discovered that yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't write an article about it, but I was like, oh my god, I loved this as a kid and this is opening up my world, and this is an art form that I just like wholly pursued. And I guess like I don't feel as knowledgeable about like the trends in the graphic novel world, but I do feel like the ability to write with images and combine words and images, like there was something about like the time that I started making work, and it was like Instagram was in the early, less toxic days, and it felt like there was a real appetite for maybe a more visual way of expression, and that like you could write something on a piece of paper and take a picture of it, and that there was like kind of an evolution of that I think is now kind of we're deeper into it. But it felt like at the early part of my career, like 10 years ago, it felt I don't know, yeah, like there was something novel about it that was appealing to more than just a tiny niche audience. And I think for my and my mom's books, and I think for everyone on this panel's books, like there's a real thing about accessibility for people reading graphic work. There's something rather than looking at a dense wall of text, like I think there's something like really open about it and inviting about it. And I think like that I don't know, I think that just based on my own experiences with it, like I will open any newsletter that is a comic, all the newsletters that I subscribe to that are a comic, I will read them religiously.
You actually read them?
Yeah.
The other ones, I don't know, sometimes, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
The Substacks we get through.
Yeah.
I'll every so often talk to a college course or something that is not a comics course, that is like a literature course, and they're teaching my book. And it's always like, they always ask about comics, and I'm always like, well, it's just the best medium because it is not just so accessible to read, but it's so accessible to make. Like anyone can kind of make one. And I think there's been this big boom in like people understanding that it's like, oh, it's just like another medium for expression. And it actually is quite easy to make and distribute comics. Not everything has to be a big hardcover book, right? Like it could always, like comics as a medium are so beautiful because like the barrier to entry for both reading and making are so low in a way that I think is beautiful.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Absolutely. I think there's something when I think of the to your point, Hallie, taking something that you can post on Instagram, whether it was text on a napkin with a sketch, or if it was a fully digital rendered piece for the format that eventually becomes down the line after all of the episodes of the web comic are out, or after everything has been compiled. And like Adam Ellis is who comes to mind, like right now, thinking of some of the collections that were just Instagram posts first and are now full-fledged stories, or how you can share and bring things together in different spaces like that. There are almost everyone I can think of. I was reading as a webtoon first, and then I go, oh, you published this? Well, time to support again, like a new avenue to support. But right, Mattie, the barrier for entry is a little more democratized. It's a little more like, if you want to put it out there, you can build that audience. Now, what would you say kind of like on that, the role that digital access, whether we're looking at social, whether we're looking at kind of to some of the earlier points of more accessible for readers, with graphic novels having things like library reading apps to access things like that, how would you say that digital access, just blanket statement, has grown the space or has helped influence your audiences?
I feel like I have to mention the Nib.
Yes.
RIP, beloved Nib, which was a wonderful nonfiction comics journalism website, which published short form stories. Mattie was an editor. The first piece that I ever published that I feel like I was paid like a fair comics rate for, and also the first piece that really gained kind of a wide readership, was a piece that I did for the Nib in 2017. And I really feel like working for this online comics journalism site and with some wonderful editors, including Shay Merck and Matt Bors, really helped sort of shape my comics voice. So the fact that there was an online publishing platform was huge for me, particularly early in my career.
Yeah, I mean, same. It was before I worked there as an editor. It was also the first place that paid me for a comic after putting them online for free for 5 or 6 years and making them for no one for years before that. But like it was the first place that paid me too. And it was this amazing resource for like, we were very proactive about getting new people who didn't have published work before and paying them a fair rate and editing them for the first time, which
Yes.
a lot of, I mean, the sort of downside of the accessibility of comics, right? It does, because the barrier for entry for making them is so low, it does allow for this like huge diversity of voices to be making unfiltered work. But the sort of like flip side of that is that comics are so often unedited when they are posted online. And getting used to an editor is such a nice thing to do. Like it made me such a better artist and writer. Editing other people's work made me a better writer. And I think that was just a really valuable thing that we were able to do for a decade. But I mean, there's a sadder point about the growth model in media being so horrible for small publications, which eventually doomed us twice, and then the third time was the cost of paper.
Oh,
Yeah.
That hurts.
Yeah. Well,
but it's true. I mean, it's the reality.
Yeah. I mean, I think my mom is kind of an interesting element to this chat because, I mean, mom, just to overview, like my mom's background is in newspaper journalism and then magazine journalism. And then,
and believe me, the cost
having
the cost of paper resonated with me.
But my mom had never read a graphic novel before I looped her in to work on mine with us. So I'm curious, Mom, like what your experience of dipping into the graphic novel world from traditional journalism and stuff.
Well, it's so funny because I'm that audience that might have said if I hadn't worked with you, comics aren't real. You know, that's not real reading.
Get out.
I'm talking 15 years ago, I might have said that. And when Hallie and I started and we're working on the first book with the underlying topic is grief. And honestly, we're partway through. And I said, well, how come you keep throwing all my words out? She said, I don't need them. I don't need them. I don't need them. So I was a baby brought into the world of graphic novels through Hallie, and I'm stunned by the power of conveying emotion and the whole. I'm 65, and I had a magazine for 10 years, and the magazine underwent the digital world took away a lot of the magazine revenue, the cost of paper. So that form just disappeared under me, essentially. So I've witnessed all these evolutions, and I have to say that you were talking about the digital space and the audience, and we hear from people that are impacted, and I think that particularly in our case, the topic of grief, the impact is so powerful with the imagery, and that is what Hallie has taught me is that those and reaching the audience that you can now, because this is new to me. This is a incredible reach thanks to the digital access now.
Absolutely. And looking at how the two of you work together, how do you go about bringing that story to life? Is that process, Suzy, that you are writing and handing to Hallie to say, okay, what does this look like? What is some of your brainstorming or like process sessions look like?
Well, the first book, What to Do When I'm Gone, about the loss of your mother, was me really not knowing, I'm sorry, what a graphic novel was in the year 2015. So essentially I wrote a draft, and then that book was more a question and answer, where Hallie asking what to do in the event of my sudden death, how she would live the rest of her life, what advice I would have. And the second book, by then I knew
conversational. Yeah.
And our process was how we hammered out how to work together with a writer who knows nothing about it, and Hallie teaching me what the graphic novel. So Hallie really guided that project. And the second book, What to Do When You Get Dumped, which just came out, that I wrote in about a year. And then we began to collaborate and hammer out in a lot of meetings the page by page work of the manuscript, and then her art was another year.
So it's, as I'm sure Mattie and MK know as well, it's like you're really always like fiddling with the balance of writing and image. And I think with me and my mom, all of that is, instead of me in my room by myself doing that, it's through conversation with my mom, and we're writing together. I'm sketching and showing her things, like, so the image is going to say this. So the words only need to say this, and and just like narrowing. And it's very like squabble heavy but fun, I would say, is our our
That's
collab.
true. That's absolutely right.
Yeah, mother-daughter squabble heavy collaboration, but it's fun.
Yeah.
Someone bring in the documentary crew for that. I want to see the behind the scenes while you two work together on a project.
Believe me, my husband will tell you it's annoying.
Now, but to the group as a whole, how do you balance your work? I mean, there's so much that you have to do to create on all of these levels. Like, how do you balance creativity and life? And in all of your cases, you are writing about such important, but such, I don't want to say heavy because heavy is not the right word, but such thoughtful topics. There's so much there to digest and to help everyone, I don't know, either feel seen or feel better in the world that is harder and harder to do. What's your process like? How do you take care of yourself after like an especially hard day? All of that. I'd love to hear it.
If anyone knows the secret to a work-life balance, I would love to hear it.
It's not going to come from me, I'll tell you
for
that.
me, it's like there's like a there's like a two-pronged thing where, I mean, well, comics is tough because it still famously does not pay that much, and it's a lot of work to get a comic book down. So you do kind of have to work crazy hours if you want to make it work. And you got to do a lot of things. Like I have a lot of jobs on the side, but I find it very helpful for me personally to have creative hobbies that are not monetized in any way. Like I play music with some friends, and I do some I like play softball, and I go to the gym. Like there's other things I have to have hobbies that are not job related, or else I will go nuts. And in terms of like the emotional stuff in the work, I think for me, the way that I try to see it is I think it's very easy to be like, well, I've made this work about something capital I important, and therefore I'm done and I've done my part for the world or whatever. But I have found myself in general kind of dissatisfied with that point of view. And it's kind of like, well, the art is the art and like the world is the world for me. Like I don't feel better unless I've gone and done something, like I don't need to get into it on the podcast, but like there's things out there to be done that are not like, I don't think, especially when I was doing like weekly political cartoons, you get emails being like, oh, you're like, this is so helpful. And I'm like, who's this helping? Not me. Like it's not actually changing anything. Like obviously art has its place in social change and society. And like there is a real place for it. And it's important, I think, for people's imaginations, right? Because we had this, not to, I'm trying to say this humbly, but it's like, we are lucky to have imaginations that can imagine the world in a different way. So it is like, I feel sort of like I should be using that for good purposes. But at the end of the day, it's still like materially nobody's been helped except for me, and I try to keep that in mind.
Absolutely. I think that's got to be a tough balance of how to feed yourself, but also give yourself space to recognize that what you are doing is impacting the world. I mean, art has such an important place in the landscape of change, but right, what should we be doing with our free time to also make a difference?
Yeah.
Stay tuned for next week's episode on book bans.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I too feel like I probably work more hours than is balanced for a healthy person, but I try to fill that out with also having hobbies, including like a movement practice, which like I do Taekwondo and I'm pretty dedicated to it. Try to do it multiple times a week. And turns out doctors are right. Exercising is good for your body and also your brain.
Hate when they're right.
I hate that endorphins are real. I'm so
it
mad
works
about it.
so well. It's nuts.
I hate it.
That's
Anyway, yes. So, practicing the fact that I do spend many, many hours in my house and in my home studio drawing, with sometimes leaving my house and also being a person in the world. And I do agree that like I do think that art can be a piece of activism and can be a piece of social and global change. But also I think that it needs to be balanced with like leaving your house sometimes and doing things, physical things around people volunteering, moving physical items and bodies and people around spaces in the world, I think is also really important. And I definitely try to think about that and include multiple pieces of that into my life. And it's tough to balance, but I also know that like literally every working person, and especially every working artist, is wrestling with those same balance questions.
Yeah, I knew it was a dangerous question to ask. The group of like, truly, what is one of the biggest elements of the gig economy in publishing, if not comics and graphic novels?
Also, one of maybe like the most time consuming like art forms out there.
The layers, both literally and metaphorically, I guess.
I think you do it long enough and you just get chronic pain and repetitive stress stuff. And like I was never someone who was thought that I would do Pilates 5 days a week, and here I am because I can't not, because I will be in pain and chronic pain and like massive burnout led to a point in like my early 30s, maybe. I'm 35 now. Up until then, I really was someone who was like, I am my art. My art is me. This is my full identity. I would do binges of staying up all night, days in a row. I wouldn't ask for an extension. I would just burn my life down to meet a deadline that was totally arbitrary. And I would say yes to everything. And I hit a point where I had to create division and make rules that were essentially like, I am not my art. This is really, really important to me and sacred to me, but my life is more important. The people in my life come before my art, my family, my friends, my partner, my babies, my dog, like myself, my body, my health come before the work. And it's really hard because I still have like a voice that can chime in and try to, demand more. But it feels like a foundational thing and a thing where I really matured as I don't know, as an artist and as an adult when I was like, this isn't the most important thing in the world. If I, need to stop doing it for a living, I will, but I won't stop doing art. But like this can't break my body, soul, relationships, whatever, because otherwise, what's the point? It's drawing, it's comics, it's.
Shout out to Creoda Wilberg's book, Draw Stronger, which is about things you can do to not demolish your body being a working artist.
An amazing book,
I think one thing I'll add is that obviously much of my work is memoir, including genderqueer. And I think in the process of working on that book, which I did do too quickly and did face quite a bit of burnout at the end of it. But in writing about my life, I think I realized that living a good life is also art, or like it is part of the art practice. And especially if you're going to write about your life, you need to also live it. And if you do nothing about work as a memoirist, you will then have nothing to write about except being burnt out and tired all of the time. And so, I'm a queer person, I'm a trans person, and a lot of what I love and think about is like, is gender and identity and sexuality. And I love having conversations with different people about that and figuring out like, when did you come to this self-knowledge? Or like, when was it that this piece of who you are unlocked for you? Or what was, a step on that path? And talking to people about what those things were. And then also like having those like deep, rich, interesting conversations and being like, today, it is actually more important that I have a 3-hour conversation with this new friend than sit at my drawing desk for 3 hours, because that conversation is going to enrich my own thinking about who I am and also the world. And that may feed back into art. And like, who knows, I may end up drawing a comic about this conversation. But in order to do that, I have to make the space and time to have this conversation and like have this like life experience. And so I really had, especially when I was going back to like the digital distribution question from earlier, I was initially writing short autobiocomics and posting them online. And I was, posting them a couple a week, and then I'd need to go and live more so that I'd write more to write about. I came to this real realization that like the conversations and living and being in the world, and then the processing that living through art were like two sort of feet on bicycle pedals. And it's like you needed to do both to propel like both the life and the art forward. You had to like live and then write about living, and then live and then write about living. and that you have to do both. And I think that writing memoir and also like trying to run like basically like a weekly gender-based comic online about was like kind of taught me that.
It's interesting because I think I have the same thought about fiction, which is if I'm not out in the world, if I'm not having conversations with people, if I'm not getting recommendations for things to watch and read and experience, if I'm not going places, I don't have any ideas.
Yeah.
Like I get ideas when I'm talking to people, when I am experiencing something new. I think all the time about there's that old Kurt Vonnegut quote about how we're meant to fart around. Like his wife is like, why don't you like order stamps off Amazon or whatever? And he's like, no, you're supposed to like, I think he says we are dancing animals. It's like, you're supposed to like go out in the world and like see a baby and like smell a flower and wander around the sidewalk. And like, that's stupidly so important to me. Like, for me to like go walk around my neighborhood and see 10 people I know, like is so much more valuable than sitting in my room and staring at the ceiling when I don't have anything to write about.
Man.
Yeah,
totally.
1,000%.
Mom, do you have a
I know
a thought on work-life balance?
Well, I'm retired except for going into the book thing, and when I was really deep into the what to do when you get dumped, which is memoir-ish, my hope was that our book would provide comfort for people, but I found the process of doing the memoir part of it very triggering and anxiety laden. So the whole exercise thing when I was writing it, which was over about a year, just being outside and getting out of my head, and then also leaning on support, which I mean, I had to have a counselor to get through writing the book. And I had to talk to somebody because the going over my life in that granular detail was very triggering. As Hallie knows, because Hallie was with me during that time. So I think leaning on whatever sources of social support you have is another factor. Plus, I walked about 10,000 miles.
Hell yes. I love that.
I also think that as hard as it can be to make a book, especially like the one my mom and I made, there's some weird algebra where it would be harder not to make it. Like it would be harder to leave the knot like balled up. Like it's somehow, it sucks, it's challenging, it's triggering, and like, yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of why we all draw. I love the bicycle pedal thing. Like that's exactly how I feel as well. And that like, there's just something that happens when you sit down and allow yourself to like flush out what you're feeling and draw and write about your life, that it's some, I don't know, it's some catharsis. And I love that we're talking about the accessibility of comics, because for if it can help your mental health, then more people should do it.
Yeah, and I too had to reach that place where it was like, is not talking about my identity and like not coming out to my family, or like the fears associated with that, or is like the stress of not being known and seen and recognized in the world. It was very like this balancing act of like, which weight is heavier, like the fear of coming out and talking about my identity, or the fear of never being known and seen as my true self. Those two weights were at a real even balance for a long time. And I was like, I don't know which one of these is more scary or which one of these has more hope in it, until finally I think it got to a tipping point where I was like, no, I gotta write about it. I gotta write about it. And that feels like the better option. And it's like both options seem scary, but this one feels like it has more hope. So we're gonna go with this one. But I think a lot of people probably have a book in them that is being held in the balance of that. Is this worth telling, or is it worth the risk of telling this? And it's a really personal question, especially with memoir, whether the sort of risks of telling it feel worth the having gotten it off your chest.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that weight, and even the idea of like, oh, well, we all have a story within us. And sometimes it's about, for the reader, it's about to go out and find the stories that sit and match so nicely on the shelf with yours. So sometimes it is that like, oh, that story in me sees the story in you. And for you all, it sounds like, right, just because you hit the center of the onion while you're chopping it and the tears are streaming down your face, you still need those onions in the dish. So you got to keep cutting. You got to work through it. You have to just kind of power on. And I thank you all for sharing, because it's everything here is deeply personal. Fiction, memoir, all of it comes from a part of yourself, and you're all creating and sharing that art and expression. I think the thing that's exciting about the growth of the space is as well the diversity. It's about the access. It's about what we're seeing and sharing. What are some of the most exciting things you're seeing in the medium right now?
Mm.
And I love that you all have very different perspectives. Suzy, you get to come at this from like, well, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have even picked up a graphic novel compared to now.
Well, yeah, and I just read one. Hallie will know her last name. It's Cry When the Baby Cries. Hallie, Becky.
Becky. Yeah, Becky Barnicoat is a cartoonist who does work for the New Yorker and other places, who has a new memoir out about being a new parent.
And it's so good. And she's a 30 years from the time that I raised kids, and I so related. It was as if I was back. So that's the power of the medium to me.
I love it. What else are you all seeing right now? Any trends or anything that is on your radar right now as everyone looks toward their shelves?
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
I'm pretty excited. I mean, like, there's been a couple of trends that are exciting to me. One is like, you go to like an indie comic show or a small press show now, and like everybody is trans, which is so nice to me. Compared to like
makes
what
it feel very homey.
Yeah, like compared to like what it was demographically when I first entered the scene a long time ago, it was a lot of, what I can only describe as like sad glasses men.
Yes.
And
Yes.
as a former member of that community, but like, which is not to say nobody was making good comics, which is not true,
Right.
but like, it's just there
was a certain sameness about the people whose work was being held up in particular. Yes.
Yeah. And there's like, and I think there's like a lot of, I think, sort of like more, I would say, radical work that's being sort of accepted and out there, which is really, to me, very exciting in terms of like people kind of like not worried about the content of their books so much, because it's kind of like, well, if you are trans, if you are, like like a racialized minority or whatever, like they're going to call you the slur. They're going to call me a pervert no matter what. Right. Like, so like, why not just make the thing I want to make? And again, comics can be so like auteurish that you could just kind of do it. And that to me is really, really exciting.
I think one thing that I've been delighted by is it feels like books that are, memoir and personal, but also like not afraid to be kind of messy or like multi-genre or intersectional are coming out. And I mean, like, obviously Moz came out and it's a seminal work and it's incredible. And then like in like last year, Solomon Rogers' like Heavyweight came out, which is also a memoir about a family Holocaust story, survivors of the Holocaust. But the author is trans, so there's a trans mask element and a very anti-Zionist. So he's like wrestling with the Holocaust sort of family history through a trans anti-Zionist lens. So now it's like we're adding like 2 extra levels of like complexity to a story that of course is like a different story than we've already told, but it's like you can then set it on the shelf next to Moz, and then they're like, these 2 books are in conversation with each other. But this one is adding like 2 new things to the soup, to the conversation. And I feel similarly about Tessa Hull's like Feeding Ghosts, where it's like, okay, this author is Chinese American and is like, writing about family trauma and family history. And not only is she going to condense like 100 years of like the most devastating recent Chinese history, but also this like intense family story that includes, mental illness and, trauma and travel and therapy and like rebellion and just many, many elements. And I feel like I really like memoir. I love reading memoir. And I feel like I'm seeing books that are being more like willing to make those connections between like the personal and the global, or the personal and the historical, and also say like, this isn't just a Jewish book. This isn't just a trans book. This is going to be a trans Jewish book. Things like that, like refusing to pare down the lens of who you are or what your family story is to try to fit into like a neat genre.
weirdly, like my mom and I's books, both of them, I think the second one is a little more easy to call a memoir, but we don't know what to call them. It's not exactly a graphic novel. It's not fiction. It's not exactly memoir. It's not a picture book. So graphic book, like, I don't know, but it is really cool that it doesn't, people don't get too hung up on that. It's a book. It's allowed to exist. It's not really a comics panels, but it kind of is comics, but it's kind of not. And there's an incredible freedom to that. There's an incredible freedom to being able to kind of bust open this is what, like, Linda Berry, why I was so obsessed with her. I was like, oh, you don't need to make that much sense.
There are no rules. You can do anything.
Yeah. And what I was going to say, I mean, I'm a little bit immersed in the baby world because I have baby twins, but I think it's been really cool to see a lot of like graphic novelists and edgy cartoonists like also make kids books, and kids book authors make graphic novels. Like Ruth Chan is a kids book author who came out with a graphic novel recently that I really want to read. And then Liana Fink has a kids book called Mixed Feelings, and it's a really cool thing to be able to read a book to my kids with like a sensibility that feels of 2025, I guess, in a way of being like, oh, like we can talk about our feelings. Like that. I don't know. Just, it's been really cool to see that, I guess, like, I don't know, inspiring to see the kids book world and graphic novel world like also lose a bit of boundaries, and that you can exist in both spaces. And yeah,
I immediately think of Kay Beaton putting out Ducks and also Shark Princess, like within 2-3 years of each other. So like putting out this like
and
what, like 400-page devastating graphic novel about the mining industry and like sexual harassment and like environmental devastation in Canada, and then a cute, sweet, like, or like a children's picture book about, like, you know, shark mermaids, you know, and like being like these are both combined. And then like Vera Brosgol has, you know, like many graphic novels, and then also like books like Memory Jars, like, so like the picture book and the graphic novel, and then also just put out her first prose novel. So like I feel like there's also a bit of a breakdown in being like, you have to be a single genre creator.
Yes. No, I love that. And I love the point as well of just kind of like, we're seeing juvenile graphic novels, we're seeing middle grade graphic novels, the YA, like the space is wide open. And absolutely, to your point, Maya, I love the flow between format, and there's so much depth that's just like being welcomed.
Lucy Nisley is another person who's put out picture books, middle grades, and then memoirs for adult. Lucy's work is incredible so and covering everything from like childbirth, marriage, aging grandparents, you know, in the sort of adult memoir realm, to like cute coming of age, like like farmers market, middle grades, and then picture books of cats, bicycles, just kind of like, these are all the things that I love. I'm going to write about all of them. Yeah.
I also think as an artist, it's really, I mean, I think about like Kate Beaton, and even for my mom and I, we are like, please, for the love of God, let's not do a book about grief. Like, can we please do like we're now talking about kids book ideas, and like as an artist, it's a real pleasure to be able to dip into those worlds. And like, I don't know, when we're talking about work-life balance, like part of my work-life balance right now is like, I'm working on a kid's book, and I'm working on like other books that are maybe more intense, but there's like a nice, like refreshing aspect to be able to like jump between them. So yeah.
That definitely makes sense. That's a balance the work with more work, but different work.
Yeah. Like I just
exactly.
Yeah. My book that's coming out in July is fairly heavy. And I think kind of upsetting, and was upsetting to make, and I'm working on a new book now, and it's fun because I had to take a break. I'm just making a fun one because I had to do it. Yeah.
Treat yourself.
Absolutely. It's gonna go insane. Yeah. To just, I'll treat myself by drawing another 300-page graphic novel.
But this one has jokes.
Yeah.
Well, while we're in kind of the recommendation space, I know we're running out of time, but I could talk to all of you forever, and I don't want to let you go, but I know I have to. First, what are some essentials that you would recommend to folks who are either just getting in, or ones that you're like, this is I gift it to everyone, or I recommend it to everyone? And then also if you have any underrated gems that you want to shout out. Is everyone either turns to the
Hallie,
mental
this is
brain
all on
cells?
you.
I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like if you want to read like the most sort of literary word heavy version of a book, you have to read Fun Home, right? Like it's got so many words. But it's a really good, beautiful example of a memoir. And if I think specifically for people who are not as much comic readers and are coming from the book world, that can feel like a good intro to comics. And then if you want to like flip onto the other side and read something that is like much more pictures and much more loose, I really love Eleanor Davis's work, and I would suggest like You and a Bike and a Road, I think is the title, for like something that is like a very different way to approach comics. Almost no panel borders, a lot of pages that are just like a loose sketch, not like realistic perspective. You know what I mean? Getting sort of flipping from sort of, I would say, high realism to high abstraction in comics. So I really love both of those books. And then I'm hoping it's not too much of an underrated gem because I want everyone to know about it. But I am very obsessed with the book A Chromatic Fantasy by H.A., which is published by Silver Sprocket, which is
It's a good book.
Trans medieval erotic phantasmic daydream nightmare of a of a beautiful strange story. It's very influenced by like medieval manuscript kind of like illuminated style. And it's trippy and it's weird and it's sexy and I liked it a lot.
That sounds incredible.
I always forget that I should have recommendations loaded because now I'm like, what is good in the world? I mean, I feel like I would say like in terms of like the classiques that you want to hit, I really Persepolis cannot be beat to me. I love that book so much. It's really beautiful. And I would say an easy entrance point into the world of like graphic novels. Underrated recent gem. There's a Ben Passmore, Ezra Clayton Daniels book called Bottom Feeders that I really love. It feels like you read it and you're like, oh, this is a book made for me specifically. Like it's just really, it's like a social satire that's got big monsters, which is very near and dear to my heart as someone who made a book just like that. But I really, really, really love that book. And the recent work of Leo Fox, Boy Island, is the book that he did recently. I also loved a whole lot.
Love it.
Yep.
I really want to write down everything you guys are saying, so I'm going to have to listen to this again. So my kind of book that I always give is What It Is by Linda Berry. I've already name dropped her several times. But she really was my like coming to comics person. And I just kind of think of her as like my North Star in kind of a weird personal way. And then, yeah, my new obsession is I moved to Cincinnati 2 years ago, and there's a Cincinnati cartoonist who is a legend, actually. It's Carol Tyler, who has made several like absolute tomes, incredibly thick, beautiful, mind-blowing. My mom read these as well. Books that I'm just like, oh my God. Like I'm like, now Linda Berry, Carol Tyler are like up there. But yeah, my favorite of hers that I would start with is A Soldier's Heart. It's a book that's like about her investigating her father's involvement in World War II, but it's also like this really complex family memoir, and she's just amazing. And I couldn't believe when I moved here. I feel like Cincinnati's a small town and everyone's like, oh, Carol Tyler. Like, but I just didn't know about her. And so now I'm like, please, everyone, read Carol Tyler. So that's my plug.
I'm happy to report to you that I have a MFA in comics, and both Linda Berry and Carol Tyler were texts that we read in my CCA MFA comics program. So
that makes me so happy.
At least at the grad level, people are reading them.
That also makes me feel better about feeling absolutely schooled by you and Mattie about your deep graphic novel knowledge. I'm like, am I a cartoonist? I don't know who that is.
Well, that's the thing, is there's so many comics now that you can be reading in really different lanes. And like,
yeah.
I feel like there was a minute where I was like, oh, I'm going to try to keep up with like, every every memoir, that comic that's coming out. And I'm like, it's simply impossible now.
Yep.
Like there are too many,
Yeah.
which is a beautiful problem to have.
Yeah, this is how I lose all my money at every festival I ever table at. It's like the
true.
last day, and I'll be out of books and be like, time to wander around, and then I'll end up spending $300 on books that I have never touched because I have
and you
too
buy
many
a
now.
stack as big as the stack of your own titles that you'd brought for day
Yep.
one. Yeah.
Dangerous. It is dangerous. And also I'm like, okay, well, I guess I need to go brush up on my Ohio authors. But failure here up in Cleveland.
There's
Uh,
some. There's
You're in
you
Cleveland?
I am.
the
Columbus.
Crossroads at Columbus, the CXC
Yeah.
Comic
Yeah.
Fest,
There's
and also like the what is it, the Columbus
The
College of
cartoon-
Arts. There's
the
a good
Columbus College of Art and Design, and the
Columbus
Billy
College of Art and Design.
the world's
has
biggest
a great
cartoon library and museum is in Columbus. The Billy Ireland.
the Billy Ireland.
Shout out Billy Ireland.
Carol Tyler is having a retrospective there in
Oh,
I
hell
think
yes.
maybe this summer. So we gotta take a field trip.
Road trip.
So ready.
Yeah, I got the behind the scenes tour once. It's incredible. That
I did
museum.
as well.
Yeah.
It's really worth the trip. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a good comic scene in Columbus
Yeah.
in particular because of the college keeps
cool.
hiring students who graduated out of my program. So now I know like 3 or 4 people who all live there. And
Wow.
also she's not a cartoonist, but Ashley Hope Perez, who's a very active in Authors Against Book Bans, also is out there, and there's a good lit scene
There's
out there. I
there's
must
a lot
say.
of cartoonists in Columbus, and they're always like
Yep.
telling me to move
Yep.
there. And I
Me too. They keep telling me
They
it's,
really-
the new,
they-
it's the new
I mean,
Portland.
hey,
it's
they
the
recruit-
new affordable city for comics.
Wow.
Don't forget about Cincinnati. Okay, we got a good
Good.
comic
Okay.
scene here too. We got Carol Tyler. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Well, before we go, I want to give everyone a chance to share with the audience plugs, where folks can find you online, and anything you're working on right now.
My name is Maia Kobabe. I wrote genderqueer memoir, which hopefully you can find in every library it hasn't been banned from. You can find me on various social medias at Red Gold Sparks or on Patreon at patreon.com/Maia Kobabe. And I am working on my 3rd book, which is a middle grade due out from Scholastic Graphics in 2026. So don't hold your breath, but it's on the way.
you can go to MattieLubchansky.com, MATTIE Lubchansky.com, and that's where all my stuff lives. I have a book out in July called Simplicity, my 2nd full-length graphic novel. And you can also buy my previous books, Boys Weekend and the Antifa Super Soldier Cookbook, wherever books are sold or whatever library you are at. Those are from Pantheon and Silver Sprocket, respectively. And I'm working on another book that'll be out in 2 to 7 years whenever I'm done with it. Who knows?
Nice.
So look for that.
At least you're real. 2 to 7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Let's
got
be-
some
yeah.
runway. My mom and I have 2 books, What to Do When I'm Gone and What to Do When You Get Dumped. And then I have illustrated a kid's book called Egosaurus and have a book called Directions. And I'm working on another kid's book and trying to get my mom to do a kid's book with me. So yeah. Stay tuned. And you can follow me on Instagram at Hallie Bates and on Substack at Hallie Bateman. I don't know. Search me there.
We'll
And,
link everything. Yes, Suzy, what
yeah,
about you?
I'm on Instagram under Hopkins Suzy, and I'm Hallie and I are going into children's book batting stuff around. So that's the next. I said no more grief. Let's go into.
I
let's
just want
go
to
into
say
a new space.
everyone should. My mom refuses to self-promote. It's terrible, but you should follow her on Instagram because she posts pictures of dogs, flowers, bugs, and frogs, and refuses to post anything else. So everyone
Yeah.
go check that out
Sounds
for
really
some
nice.
prime mom content.
Yeah, it's riveting mom content.
But that's
Yeah.
the content we need right now.
Yeah.
There is a small cult following, and I just want to say Hopkins Suzy on Instagram if you want just absolute, a real close up of a bee,
A break from real life. You'll find it there.
I would love to see
Wonderful,
a close-up
honestly.
photo of
Yeah.
me right now.
Honestly,
Right.
Yeah.
she delivers.
Well, thank you all so much for joining me today.
Thank
for
you,
having
Joe.
Thank you for
us.
That's
having us,
wonderful.
Joe.
Yeah.
And now this is the awkward transition to the next part of the show. Hey, y'all, it's that time in the episode where we take a quick break before our next segment. Oh, Do you like my I Stand with Library shirt? You can get your own in this color or like 15 others from plotthreadshop.com. And remember that profits from plotthreadshop.com are donated to the American Library Association's Office of Diversity, Literacy, and Outreach Services. Now, that's not the tip I wanted to give you today, but I love this shirt and I love libraries, so how could I not call it out? But today, I want to hop into Libby and look at how you can run a deep search and add something to the Notify Me Smart tag. Deep search is a way to search for a title your library or libraries may not have yet, or a book that isn't out just yet. If your library doesn't have it in your collection yet, you can request they add the book by putting it on your Notify Me Smart tag. When you add a Notify Me tag to a title, you'll be alerted if and when your library adds that title to your digital collection. So let's hop into Libby and see just how easy that is to do. All right, now that we're in Libby, let's do a little searching for a title we want to borrow. Of course, one of our incredible guests today, Mattie Lubchansky's book Simplicity, will be out, I believe, well, we'll see in a minute. We'll see in a minute when we find it, if it's out yet or not. When you're watching or listening to this, but when I am recording, it is not yet out. So I am going to come down to the magnifying glass and I am going to search for Simplicity. And you can see there are 19 titles that pop up in this search result. These are all books. You see there's library cards next to them that my demo library has in stock, but none of them are what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go into that handy dandy filter button. And right here at the top, we are going to go for deep search. You see the waves, includes titles that your library doesn't have. This is applied automatically when no results are found at your library. So I'm going to tap deep search and show 787 titles. And wow, 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 that's a lot. But here we go, right here. So at the time you are watching this, this may or may not be out yet, but right now it's not out for me. So Simplicity, there's Maddie's name, Mattie Lubchansky. I am going to add this to my Notify Me tag. So when we tap on Notify Me, we can put it right here, Smart Tag, Notify Me. And then I'm just being reminded of how I will be alerted once this title becomes available. Just like that, we can see we've got the little bell icon here right next to it. So now I don't have to worry about missing when that book comes out and is ready for me to read all excitedly. That smart tag will give me a notification when my library adds it to its digital collection. Now with that, let's head into our comic, graphic novel, and manga recommendations. Well, hey everyone, it's that time of the show where our guest hosts give recommendations on the theme of the episode. Here to give us comics, graphic novel, and manga recommendations, we've got Bree at locked_booktician_, Carmen at Tomes and Textiles, and Cece at CCUing_. Hello everyone, welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Joe.
How are you all doing today?
Pretty good.
Love it.
Excited to talk about graphic novels.
Mm-hmm. And excited to eat after this.
I love that. I love the
Yes,
excitement for the
100%.
subject and for food, because food never lets you down.
It's life, truly.
So before we dive into recommendations, I think I've said it in a couple recordings with y'all in the past, but like, I love a graphic novel, and I'm sure the listeners have heard this from me over the years. If you're new, you've probably heard it a lot in this episode alone, but I love graphic novels. I love them for all sorts of reasons, especially right now, this time of the year. We are in summertime as you're watching or listening to this, and summertime to me is like my peak graphic novel time. It is, I don't know, maybe it's how I was as a kid, maybe it's whatever now, but it's also great when you need to shake up your format. Are you feeling a slump? Are you feeling a rut? Do you want to help a reluctant reader, or do you want to introduce someone to something new? This is the way to do it. All of that said, what brought all of you into graphic novels, manga, comics, whatever it might be? What got you into it? What keeps you coming back for more?
Okay. I think
Yeah.
we're all looking at each other. If you're listening, we're all like, okay, you go,
Or like,
I
who
go,
first?
we
Yeah.
go. Um, I have to be honest. So I have a friend who has a YouTube channel. It's called The Realm of Kidlicks Comics, and she is a youth librarian. And she got me really hooked on graphic novels. For a long time of my life, I wasn't like the big reader that I am right now. And she would be like, "Hey, have you read this book? Have you seen this?" And I was like, I don't know. Am I too old to be reading that? There was a lot of like things that came with it of like if I want to go that route or not. And then we started a comic book club and started to read Saga. And I said, this is where I need to be. So then that kind of just catapulted me of just reading a lot of spooky, horror, creepy stuff. Fortunately, not unfortunate. So that's how I kind of got into that stuff.
I I feel like I didn't really start getting into graphic novels, comics, any of that until I was in college. And then my girlfriend at the time was so passionate. We were going to the like local comic book store every single week to get like the newest issue of Bitch Planet was I think the one at the time that the series everyone was working on. And I just fell in love with so many different things. Started going to like art festivals and stuff. And it's amazing to see some of the independent artists that were making, you know, web comics and stuff like that, Ben, are now the people who are making Netflix original movies and series and that kind of thing. It's such a cool arc to be able to watch.
I feel like I'm the most inexperienced graphic novel reader because I feel like I came into it maybe 8, 9 years ago. And I can vividly recall it was the Monstrous series that got me into it. And mostly I picked it up because I was like, this cover is luring me in. And then the story really just, oh, anyway, if you haven't read that, this is my fifth like recommendation. Sorry, these are how I'm seeking in my recommendations. But that really gripped me and moved me in. And then I find that I'm a cover picker, and like graphic novels are perfect for that. You can definitely read
Be like
one
that.
by the cover. It's never like a huge time investment. And I'm always just so satisfied to have like that quick snack and fixing of like something that's beautifully illustrated story.
Absolutely. I think the covers especially really sell graphic novels, whether that like, because I'm looking at all of your picks right now and you all have such beautiful ranging picks today. Carmen, I'm seeing your inspiration that some of these are adaptations of important works, or whether, like Cece, you have just like beautiful art styles. And then Bree, you've got the manga for us today. Sorry, that's how I say it here, but I know other people say
Manga.
manga.
They do.
I try to catch myself, but I'm already working on enough words. Like I'm one of those people who says bagel weird, so I work very hard to say that
Listen,
properly. Yeah.
dyslexia is real. Dyslexia and pronunciation, that
Mhm.
stuff is real. It took me about 20 years to learn how to say shrimp correctly. I was fighting for my life. Do you hear me? I was out here scrimp, 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 scrimp. They were like, what are you talking about for real?
You're like the
Okay.
little sea bugs that we eat.
Oh, I was fighting. Mm-hmm.
Well, you're winning the fight now. And I think all of this is beautiful. I want everyone to hear what you've all got to say. So let's dive in. I'm just going to go off the order here. Carmen, do you want to kick us off?
So again, I am not as experienced of a reader, but I feel like I read a lot of like kind of less nuanced things. And I actually checked the Libby app to make sure all of these were available. So the first one is called Tales from La Vida. It is a anthology. It's edited by Frederick Luis Aldama. And there are over 80 Latinx comic artists that have contributed to this one. It's a very tiny little anthology, and the whole thing centers on one question. So every story is one question, which is, what is your most significant moment in your life as a Latinx person? So all the stories are very heartfelt. They're very life affirming, but it also showcases that there is no singular Latinx identity. no singular Latinx experience, gender, like there's just a wide breadth of all these experiences. And for me, when I read this, I kind of screamed into the book, and I was like, every single person that I know that's Latina, like I've given away so many copies of this book because it's like I can't pick a favorite story. I just really adored this anthology for what it stands for and how it is executed.
I would never make you pick a favorite story from it. That of all the like cruel taskmastery things I do to you all to pick so few titles and get through them so quickly, I would never say, but what's your favorite?
Mhm.
I
Thank
love
you.
a collection like this. I think this is, I love it. Anthology works, but whether it's short story, whether it's, written or when it's graphic like this, because it has such a wide array of expression. And I think that's so cool. And today's the worst day for me because all I want to say over and over is like, how beautiful. But like getting to experience so much art, so many different styles, and for this to come from you who feels less confident in her recommendations, even though that is not the case, that's incredible. It helps to prove the point of like, hey, we're meeting everyone where we're at. Go try this out. Share this. And I love a book that you're like, I have to give this to everyone I know.
Yeah. And also, I feel like I got in 80 recommendations because there's about 80 artists that contribute. So you can just go down the list and then you have 80 other like recommendations. So,
Now see, you've already figured out how to break the system and I love it.
You're thinking big.
Yeah, you're
Mhm.
playing 4D chess over there and
Mhm.
I've barely mastered checkers. Cece, how about your first recommendation?
Well, I'm continuing my summer camp book agenda. I can't be stopped. I'm gonna bring a summer camp book every single time. I think this is also the most recent graphic novel I read, so it just feels perfect for the sun being out and summertime and all that. It's Camp Prodigy by Caroline Palmer. It is a middle grade graphic novel about two non-binary kids attending the same summer orchestra camp together. So there's Tate, who is fairly new to the viola, but they are super passionate to learn after they hear a practice session of a non-binary violist prodigy named Eli. And then Eli has been downplaying their skills ever since they panicked on stage and fled without playing. So at summer camp, they get to become friends, they get better at music together, they learn about friendship, and they learn about the importance of when to take a break, even when you're creatively inspired by something. And I think that it's just really special. This book made me feel loved and happy and hopeful for so many kids, and it's fabulous.
I I am here 1,000% for a summer camp agenda, much as graphic novels are like, this is my season of them. This is also when I'm reading all kind of mess of middle grade and YA, especially summer camp stories. If it could be an episode of Pretty Little Liars I'm in, or if it's like heartwarming coming of age, this is my time to shine. But this one is so cute, gorgeous art, and like it gives you that feeling of, oh, I have hope for the kids who needed this 10 years ago. They don't need to need it today. It's ready. We just have to keep getting it to them, getting them access, getting it in front of them.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, Bree, what's your first pick?
I was over here burning.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I am also fairly new, but I do consume a lot. And the thought of choosing just a few, I'll choose this is arguably probably my favorite in the whole world. So, Monster. Monster is written by Naoki Urasawa. This is a Japanese mangaka who wrote a story about this doctor. It starts off with this doctor. He is dating this girl named Evie. We don't like Evie. You're never going to like Evie. Okay, anyway. He's dating Evie, and she's like, look, I know you want me. I want you. Let's make this official. He's a little shy. He's like, I don't know if I should. I don't know if I should date you for real because you make me feel like I have to date you because your dad is the head surgeon in the hospital. And she's like, but don't you want what I want? And he's like, well, I don't know, kind of, sort of. So he goes to work. And while he's at work, he gets called in to do this pretty big surgery for someone. And in the middle of the surgery, someone comes in and they're like, quick, you have to stop what you're doing and you have to save the life of this famous person. And he goes through this like moral dilemma of trying to figure out of what he should and shouldn't do. Then he makes a choice and he actually does surgery on these two twins. Nobody knows who these twins are. Nobody knows where these twins came from. Just these twins. As the book go on, it's very text heavy. Just want to let you know there's 8 volumes. And as it go on, you start to realize that there's more insidious things that are attached to these twins, down to government agents, spies, people who are trying to kill him. And he becomes not only a doctor, but a person on a mission to figure out who is killing all of these people. And it may or may not have to do with the mysterious twins. Now, what is beautiful about this is every volume is set up in a way where it kind of looks like a collage. So if you put them all together, it's like a beautiful picture at the end, right? But all I'm going to say is this. Get you Monster today, not yesterday. They're running out on like you owning them, and there's not a lot of copies out there, and to get them is quite expensive, and it took me a very long time to get all 8 volumes, but it is super dope, and I think you should read them.
There is nothing more wild than a manga plot, and you never know what it's going to be, and you never know where it's going to take you. Bree, you shared that your friend who is a youth librarian got you into graphic novels. What got you into manga, or did they get you into manga as well?
What got me into manga? Oh, yes. So I have a couple friends who are YouTubers as well, and they read like a ton of manga. And they saw that I was starting to get interested. And this is really what Monster really had me in a chokehold for years.
I mean, and a classic. Like,
Listen, it was beautiful. And they were like, hey, do you want to do reading 30 manga in 30 days? And I was like, oh, that gives me an opportunity to read more manga. So I think it's April and September, they do it on YouTube. I used to be involved in it like heavily, but now I'm a participant. But it's like getting into that and reading manga with other people. It really like helps you get more, I guess, secured in the manga world. The only issue with me and other people who read manga is I specifically always only read horror and thriller. That is not popular in the manga world. People want slice of life. They want a little BL. They want a little lovey. I don't want none of that. I rebuke it. Some say in the name of Jesus. I don't make the rules. They did. I just showed up. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So for me, it's just really like the spooky stuff is what I like. I'm not really a fan of the other stuff. I've read it and it's okay, but it doesn't draw me like the spooky stuff.
I love that. You are so right. Like, what do I read? I'm like, oh, I read a ton of slice of life, of course. Like, I've read my fair share of Junji Ito, but I'm out here reading magical girls and slice of life. But here we are. I love
You
it.
gotta
Well,
live your
thank
life
you.
though. Stay in
You
your
got,
truth.
yeah, got to do what makes you happy. Okay, Carmen. Book number 2. Let's see.
All right. So book number 2, I'm balancing horror for people who want horror. We're not going there. And Cece, we're going to talk about our love of summer camp, of sleepaway camp, but we're not going to get there in this one. I'm sorry. But it's very adorable. This is a middle grade graphic novel. It's called Mis Quinces, and it's by Kat Fajardo. And I'm also going to beckon back to Tales of La Vida because Kat Fajardo was one of the contributors of Tales of La Vida. So that's how those two are connected. This is the thing that caught my attention about this one is that it was the first graphic novel that Scholastic released that was available in both English and Spanish. And I think I saw on Libby that both are available. So I thought that was really cool. It's not bilingual graphic novel. It's just you can get it in either or. So It's just very nice that they have made it available at both formats for middle grade, I thought. So we meet Sue, and Sue is just graduating, getting out of 7th grade, ready to just, have her rock girl summer. She's going to read a bunch of graphic novels at sleepaway camp, but her family has other plans for her, which is they take her to Nicaragua to visit the family in Nicaragua for the summer. So Sue's in a little bit of a slump and, having to deal with all of her family members who she sees very rarely. And, it's fine just with their cousins. But then she hears they're going to throw her a surprise quinceañera. And she's going to have to get out of like her shorts and t-shirts and put on this giant dress. And it is the last thing in the world that she wants to do. So Sue and we're on opposite ends of the spectrum, but I can respect the fact that when you have your uniform and your look, you don't want to break away from that. So this was just joyful. It's a story of family, of like your identity. I love that there was a little bit of like conflict with the fashion, as well as like with going through this sort of rite of passage in the Latin community. And it was just so cute. I would read anything that Kat does in the future. It's just adorable. And it's like perfect summer read, very quick summer read.
The art is adorable. And of course I have to come in with the Libby info, just reminding everyone that like Libby is available in 10 plus languages, just the app itself. So if your device is set to a language that Libby recognizes by default, Libby will open in that language. Yes. Yeah. I love the reactions on screen. So, Carmen, in your example specifically, if your device is in Spanish, Libby will open in Spanish right off the bat. Same for French, Russian, a handful of other languages. 10 plus, and the number is always growing. And so that's the app interface itself. And then books, if the publisher provides them in other languages, we make them available, of course, for folks to add to their digital library. So just throwing that out there as well. But you're right. I love seeing like the dual or like the bilingual books. Like that's fun. But I love even more seeing just the like, this is in your language. Read this in what you feel. There's not like a battle of languages in your head. It's just, hey, you got what you need. Cece, what do you have next for us?
Hey, I have one that I'm recommending, and I'm recommending this entire author, really. The thing is, I'm going to hold up this book. I can't hold it up the whole time we're talking because it's kind of a brick. And that is On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden. This thing is heavy, but it's beautiful. So if you are watching this right now, it's lovely. Maybe we can put it back there. So On a Sunbeam, it is this was originally a webcomic, but it is a hugely expansive story that initially follows a ragtag construction crew that travels through space to help maintain and rebuild crumbling structures. So it's kind of like someone who would refurbish paintings, but these people are hired to visit ruins on different planets and bring them back to life, kind of. So this book follows Mia in 2 different timelines. She's the newest member of the crew. And then we are also learning about a really pivotal time in her life, a year that she was in boarding school when she fell in love with somebody. So now that Mia is part of this crew, she's hoping that the ship and the new friends that she's made are going to be able to help her to be reunited with the girl that she loves. Tilly Walden is an incredible artist and writer, and I recommend everything she does. And if bricks intimidate you, she also has books that are like 50 to 90 pages long, just illustrated poems. And they're all gorgeous stories that mix fantasy with mental health and sapphic identity. And she also has a graphic memoir called Spinning that I highly recommend. On a Sunbeam is gorgeous. I wish I could frame so many panels and put them up on my wall. I don't know if anything could ever beat it for me. So
thank you for sharing that. I love the like, this is the one to beat energy and element of it. And when I was pulling the links for this, for all of the titles, when I saw that one, I went, oh, just from the cover alone, I went, well, I have to read that one. And now once you've shared the description, I'm like, well, I definitely have to read that now. Okay, Bree, book number 2.
I will also want to say I'm so excited that I just feel like I'm forgetting words. So if you're like, Brie, I don't know what you just said, I'll just repeat it. This is probably one of my favorite comics. This one is signed. Shout out to my friend Ashley. This was signed to me, not to do a flex on the internet, but I must speak in my truth. Okay. So Bitter Root was written by Walker, Brown, Green, Renzi, and Cowles. There's just illustrators, letterists, writers, those type of thing. So Bitter Root follows the Sangres family, and they are a family of monster hunters. And what's beautiful, not beautiful, I guess I should say, it depends on who you're with. But what's beautiful about the monster that they're hunting are people who are what I assume is infected with white supremacy thoughts. And this family is hunting them down and taking them out. So I think it's really dope. It's set in Harlem. Each of the characters, you can see this is like very pretty. Each of the characters have their own strength, have their own thing that makes them unique in the family. I love a story that has like an elderly grandma figure. She's in here. Shout out to her. Also, what I think is cool about the grandma figure is that she engages in what people would call root magic, and she uses that to help fight against these monsters and also to protect her family. There's a lot of division in the family of how they think they should hunt down these monsters and what they think they should do. I also think it's very beautiful. I don't know if it's in this volume or the last volume, and they show you the actual family tree and how people died. And I just think, like, as a Black American, it's really important to show where we came from. Often we don't get to get the whole thing, due to the transatlantic slave route and things like that, and colonialization, of course. But to see that being written into the story and seeing, the ancestors of these people and how they are using ancestral magic, I just think this is so cool and so dope. And I think you should go ahead and get it. You can get it. I think you can get it with Hoopla, which is also part of the library, but I don't know if you can get it with Libby. So I'm sorry about that, Joe. I can't remember.
You sure can. And
You can get it with Libby.
You sure can. And it is linked in the show notes for the episode.
You're welcome. I thought of that on my own. I actually knew it. I was just trying to make sure you were on your toes.
Thank you for quizzing me and keeping me awake.
I do what I can. I do what I can. No snooze fest here. Yeah.
You gotta keep me honest and ready to go.
Yeah.
I love that. I think this story, especially, just so beautiful. It harkens to so many, I think, like, important literary touchstones, and the art is gorgeous.
It's really dope.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, thank you for that one. Carmen, book number 3.
So book number 3 is, did you know that Octavia Butler has a graphic novel? Yes. So I'm recommending Parable of the Sower. It's actually adapted by Damian Duffy and John Jennings. But this is not, I don't think it's a replacement because you don't get all of Octavia's words. But I do find that if you are, and I'm using this as a placeholder, but it is one of my favorite, like, classic adaptations, like graphic novel adaptations. But I'm using this as an example that if you're scared to go to a classic because there's so many high expectations, graphic novel may be a way to just get the bare bones of the story before reading the book. I have done that in several ways. I did read Pearl Sower graphic novels second after I read the book, because I just wanted these visuals that I was imagining in the story, and I was drawn in immediately, of course, by the cover. Also, I feel like they did a good job of capturing the dystopian world that Octavia brought to life for us very well in this novel. And if you're not familiar, Parable of the Sower begins in 2024 in a world that is in economic and climate disaster. It begins with a fire, and there are so many parallels that it's very difficult not to say that Octavia did not predict the future with this novel. It's a story of Lauren Olamina, and she is a pastor's daughter. They live in this gated community, and after a fire, she goes on a journey in the world, and it's a journey that kind of transcends faith and just so many things. There's so many intersections of contemporary issues going on in this story that I'm always surprised by it. But I just thought this was beautiful adaptation and a wonderful way for anyone who is maybe scared to read classic to read it. And this one's a great one. And also Kindred. There's an adaptation of Kindred.
This was a beautiful adaptation. I mean, I agree completely. The idea of like, I wanted to see the visuals play out. Like there was something magical about this, but I couldn't agree more with your point of like, if you are hesitant, if you want to try to jump into a classic, there are a lot of great classics that are being adapted into graphic. There's a lot of great like fantasy being adapted into graphic. So if you struggle like me with a high fantasy, well, maybe now is your chance to get into like Ursula K. Le Guin with one of the graphic adaptations.
I was just about to say, isn't there a Earthsea graphic novel coming out this year?
Yes, I think it came out like a month or two ago. Like at the time of recording this, but I have to roll my eyes when I say that. But yes, it came out at some point in the first half of this year, and I'm like, finally, I can read Tales from Earthsea.
Exactly. No, and I remember in high school, I read Frankenstein novel adaptation just found in my school library. And now it's one of my favorite classics. So sometimes you feel a little difference, but I can jump into my third pick, which is a YA graphic novel called Squad. It is written by Maggie Takuda Hall, and it is illustrated by Lisa Sturl. And the back says this is Pretty Little Liars meets Teen Wolf. And I agree, but I also think that this is for fans of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and The Craft. Just despite the fact that it's set very modern day, it has this very 90s supernatural horror vibe to me. And I think a lot of people have also compared this to Heathers or like Mean Girls with werewolves, if any of that sounds good. Plus Girls Kiss, because where would one of my recommendations be without girls kissing, honestly? So this one is about Becca, who is just transferred to a new school, and she is immediately invited to sit with the Popular Clique, which is a group of girls who take her in and teach her everything she needs to know to be cool, and then they reveal their secret. They are all werewolves, and every full moon they shift and they feed on a predatory boy, and they want Becca to be one of them. So I'm obsessed with this graphic novel. It is so cool. It's got a very vintage, like 70s comic strip style, and it just reminds me, like I said, so much of those 90s early aughts supernatural horror movies, because it has this like narration throughout of Becca. It's very voiceover coded to me. It just the dramatic voiceover as she goes through the various elements of becoming monstrous and then kind of dealing with the ramifications of that. It's fabulous.
It's so good. It was absolutely one of my favorite recent reads. I read it like a year or so ago. You were spot on. The art, stunning. The vibe, immaculate. Like it's so fun. And yeah, the concept of, well, we have to feed, otherwise we get even worse. So let's go after terrible predatory men. And the conclusion, just so good. So good. Okay, Bree, book 3.
I feel like my picks are very sad in nature, so I probably should have thought about that. But here we are. Earth Divers by Stephen Graham Jones. This is a masterpiece. Some say piece, some say master. Put them together, masterpiece. This is awesome. So this follows a story of, or I should say, it's set in a time and 2,112. So we all gonna be dust and bones at that time. And at this time, an apocalypse happens, and this group of people are like, the world is pretty much shit, and we need to go back in time to specifically 1492, and we need to kill Columbus. We need to take Christopher out. So they go back and they figure out ways to plot to take him out. I think initially they thought it would be easier than it actually was. There were some casualties. There's some things that go down. I don't want to spoil this, but I just want you to know that this, to me, is a beautiful book that talks about what happens if the indigenous people went back and said, you know what? I'm going to get my lick back. I'm going to get some revenge. Because y'all thought those smallpox blankets was going to stop us. We went back and took you out. So I think that this is a really good, like, historical, spooky comic that you might want to read. I loved it. Stephen Graham Jones is Blackfeet, and he is one of my favorite just horror writers in general. And what I loved about this book is that a lot of times when an author, a traditional author, like novel, and then they go and write comics, there's always this disconnect. Is either not wordy enough or too wordy, or the art doesn't match. There's always something that just doesn't fit. What's beautiful about this is Stephen Graham Jones is a comic head, like huge comic head. So he has already manifested that one day he would write a book like this, and he already thought about what that would look like. So this is done very well. This is probably my favorite comic that I've read where it's like author to comic, because when you're writing comics, that's a different format there. And he really killed this one. So Earth Diver should be your book for sure. Your comic for sure.
So good. And come on, I mean, Stephen Graham Jones. Need you say more, right?
Why would you say more? That's it. That's all.
Have you read The Buffalo Hunter yet?
I did. It's a full in-depth review on my YouTube channel. If you're
Plug
interested.
it here and now.
Full in-depth. I might be screaming, that was a masterpiece.
Perfect. Well, good. And you know, if I remember, it will be in the show notes. A link to that video. Oh, so good. Oh, thank you for that, Carmen. We are moving into the final round of picks.
I love that Bree said that Stephen Graham Jones killed it. Like, he's a horror writer. I was like giggling in the background. I love that little play on words.
Right.
You caught it, girl.
So my final pick is, I'm not going to even go to my line of thinking, but I wanted to also make people aware that there is nonfiction graphic novels. And in this particular case, it's a nonfiction adaptation of an existing nonfiction work, which is On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century by Timothy Snyder. And the book is teeny tiny. There's 20 chapters, and you can read it in an hour, like even that long. So I thought it was really great that they did a graphic novel adaptation and expanded upon it just the tiniest bit, and put like pictures with everything, because he does kind of give historical context to some of these things that he's talking about. A lot of people recently, I've seen a lot of people say, do not obey in advance. And that's like literally chapter 1 of this. So I thought the other interesting thing that they did artistically in this graphic novel is that the drawings and like the illustrations are very bleak and dark to go with like the themes of this. And if you're afraid of nonfiction, or if you can't get into it, you feel like you're not a nonfiction person, try it in graphic novel format. And this one is a great way to start, because again, not the longest graphic novel. You can get through it in, a couple hours. Spending time with it and learn a lot in the process.
Thank you. Like, it's just like there is so much depth and breadth to this whole genre, I guess, to put comics, graphic novels, manga all in one genre. Like, it's expansive. You have all of literature at your fingertips, basically. So to have that is just like, yep, nonfiction's there too. Go look for it. Like, it's all there. You have the option. Okay, Cece, your final pick.
Yeah. No. I was just gonna say I used to just live and breathe graphic memoirs. So uh, nonfiction graphic novels, absolutely incredible. Yes, I almost chose one for my last pick, but I felt like I couldn't actually not recommend this one. I'm gonna talk about Check Please. This is a series by Ngozi Ukazu. There are actually just 2 books in the series, and it covers the 4 years of university for our main character, Biddy. It's very slice of life, found family wholesome. In book 1, we're introduced to Biddy. His real name is Eric Biddle, but as you learn pretty early on, hockey has very specific nickname rules, so his name is Biddy. He is a Southern baker, he's an amateur vlogger, and he is a former junior figure skater starting his first year of college by joining Samuel University's men's hockey team. So Biddy has to tackle the fact that unlike his co-ed team back home, college hockey has checking, which Biddy is a little bit terrified by. And also this team has a moody, attractive captain named Jack that Biddy is a little obsessed with. I read this series while I was going to college, while it was being released as a webcomic, and it's so fabulous that this is the full series now that you can just read Biddy's entire story. Mostly this is cute. This entire found family of this team and the people and the other people who go to Samwell. I think it's just a really special story, and I will forever think of Eric Biddle's stress baking through finals whenever I am stressing about anything now.
It's so cute. Like, it's such a wonderful note to end your list on. Like, delightful, happy slice of life. And like, oh, so good. I will only mumble praise, so I will pass the torch on. Bree, what's going to be your final recommendation? I know you came so prepared. What darlings are you killing? What are we
This is
going for our
so
last one?
sad. I will say this is what I had.
Yes.
Um, I had a couple people, but I decided to go with a book that I recommend to almost everybody I know. This is a nonfiction. It is clearly very loved. My friend gave this book to me, I think right when it came out. And I don't usually cry in books, but I cried several times reading that. I don't know if this is the thing that people who are listening or watching want to know, but I was in tears. This is The Best We Could Do by, I think it's TB, or I probably did not pronounce her name right. So I apologize for that. But this is a story of this woman, the author, she is writing her life and how her family had to go from Vietnam during the war and migrate to America. And she talks about her life with everyone in her family. You start to learn about silence and how a family will choose to be silent or don't have any other choice but to be silent, and how that can impact the younger generations and make them feel like maybe they aren't loved, or make them feel like maybe they're not cared for. And what's beautiful about this is that she talks about everything that she went through with her family, leaving Vietnam and then coming to, I think they went to California. But going there and then going to Cali, and then her becoming pregnant and her realizing like, oh, I understand why my mom did this. Oh, I understand why my dad did this. She's starting to understand the parts or the things that her parents did to keep her safe and to keep her sane. And just watching, or not watching, I guess you are watching it because you're reading it and seeing it on the paper, but just that story was just very beautiful. I love reading memoirs. Like Cece was saying, I love a good memoir. And I love when it's in graphic novel because it's like you get to see it, especially if you are a visual person. Like that's just the added bonus on it. And I just really appreciated this. And I think that if I was to have written something like this, I think this would be the hardest thing that I would ever do. Like, you find yourself while you are reading this, just fully your empathy and the capacity of your empathy that you have for this woman and her entire family. And then you start to think about how like immigrants and refugees are being treated at large in the United States. And you're like, you had to go through all of this hardship to then be treated as if you are not a full functioning human being. It's just so disheartening. So you find yourself being like, thank you. Like, I don't know any other way to say, but like, thank you for sharing your story. Your voice matters. And this was just beautifully written. This is 10 stars if we can give it to it. As a therapist, this was like so beautiful to dive into. And I think that's all I would say about it, because I think I was starting to get a little emotional there. But this is a fantastic nonfiction, the best we could do.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I cannot wait to pick that up and absolutely sob, because that's what I feel like it will deliver. But that's so meaningful and so important. Before I let you all go, I'm going to sneak in one little book rec that's been like needling in the back of my mind through this whole time. Uh, there's a lot of like nostalgia I'm feeling right now. And we were talking about Scholastic earlier, and Scholastic Graphics has recently decided to put out an Animorphs graphic novel series. So if you are, all the faces, love seeing the shock. There are, I believe, 6 volumes out right now, or the 6th. The 6th is incoming. So the wildly popular best-selling sci-fi series by Catherine Applegate and Michael Grant returns in a new full-color graphic novel series adapted by Chris Grine.
Full color? The
Full
budget
color.
is high. The budget is high.
Exactly. So if you...
I am so excited.
If you are feeling nostalgic, if you want to get back into, like, if you were an Animorphs kid and you want to get back into it, great. If you are now a parent and you want to introduce your children to the wildness that is Animorphs, go for it. I will say the covers are gorgeous. This is zero shade, and they still have a bit of the transformation on the cover. But nothing will compare to those original Animorphs covers. Nothing will compare to that whole transformation. But yeah, so check it out. They're absolutely beautiful. They are full color, and it's Animorphs, y'all. Get into it.
I have not read that series, but I did see someone do a full review. It's Gavin Reads It All on their YouTube channel. Yeah. I was like, Gavin is committed to the cause. I don't know if I would read it, but now, like, read the books. But now that you've told me there's some graphic novels, I might have to spin a block.
And they are slim. They are it's juvenile fiction, so it's, like, heading toward the middle grade market. So you can rip through these probably faster than you'd get through one of the classics. So, and again, graphic novel format. This is the secret. Well, thank you all so much for being here and sharing your recommendations. Now is the time where we transition to me doing an outro. What an incredible look at the broad scope of graphic novels. We heard from Suzy, Hallie, Mattie, and Maia about their experiences in the industry, how they create impactful works, and how they fight both physical and mental burnout in the world of graphic novel creation. And then Bree, Carmen, and Cece gave you 12 plus graphic novels to check out or share your love of in the comments section. Make sure you're subscribed and following the show. You won't want to miss next week's episode when I'm joined by Amanda Jones, Kaylin Bayron, Pat Scales, and Skip Dye to talk about book bans and the state of reading today. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow Book Lounge by Libby on your favorite podcast app and check out the Libby app YouTube channel for our video content. You can also find us on social at libby.app, and you can send an email to bookloungebylibby@overdrive.com. If you're loving the show, a quick rating or review helps other book lovers find us. Thank you so much for joining me today, and as always, happy reading! You can sample and borrow the books from today's episode in the Libby app, or if you're a librarian, find them for purchase in Overdrive Marketplace. Book Lounge by Libby is a proud Evergreen Podcast signature program. Explore more amazing shows at evergreenpodcasts.com. This podcast is produced and recorded by me, Joe Skelly, with editing by Andrew Alonzo. Our theme music is High Five by Rex Banner, used with permission. Book Lounge by Libby is presented by the Libby app. Learn more at libbylife.com/booklounge.